Good day everyone, especially to our lab instructor, Ma'am Hannah Alfon. By the way, I'm Ermaris Imyongad in Trip 3A and now I'll tackle about the supply chain planning. So, the word supply is the total amount of specific good or services that is available to consumer. So that can relate to the amount available at a specific price or the amount. So, the supply chain planning is the forward-looking process of coordinating assets to optimize the delivery of goods, services, and information from supplier to customer, balancing supply and demand. So, ang supply planning DI is the inter-planning process which include distribution, manufacturing, and procurement operations according to demand forecast. So, for example, retail companies become involved in supply chain management to control product quality, inventory levels, timing, and expenses, or etc. So, example is ang farming. Farming, refining, design, packaging, transportations, or etc. There are three drivers of effective planning. So one is supply chain visibility. So the first drive of planning system development is the need for visibility regarding locations and status of supply chain inventory and resources. So visibility implies not only being able to track supply chain inventory and resources but also the information regarding available resources can be effectively evaluated and managed. So, ang supply chain visibility is the trackability or traceability of product orders and physical product shipment for the product source to their destinations or from supplier to manufacturer to consumer. For example, they may inform the retailer that a product was delayed on its departure from on air. So, the retailer or visibility solution is usually responsible for connecting the event from the shipment level back to the product of the shipment and also provide this detailed visibility as a service using their visibility tools. And number two is simultaneous resources considerations. Simultaneous resources considerations is the ability to include demand, capacity, material requirements, and constraints and defining alternative is, for example, initial plan. Initial plan is then adjusted to reflect material and searching constraints. So number three is resource utilizations. Resource utilizations is logistic and supply chain management decisions. Many enterprises resources including productions, distribution facilities and equipment, transportation equipment and inventories. So resources utilization is a project management focus on how much time team members spend on various tasks. For example, if over 6 months period, a resource work for 840 hours and there were 960 hours of work available, then the resource utilization is kanang 840 divide 960 is the total amount is 875 pesos. And that's all. Thank you.
Good day, everyone. I am Sherry May Ramirez, and my assigned topic is supply chain planning application. Supply chain planning increasing in frequency and scope. Supply chain application includes demand planning, production planning, logistics planning, and inventory planning. Demand planning. It seeks to provide such capabilities. Demand management, it is a process na ginabalance ang customer requirements with the capabilities of supply chain. It begins with a forecast. Demand planning is predicting future demand or forecast. It is to gather information sa sales, marketing, sa sa operations sa finance departments para ma-estimate nila kung unsa kadaghan ang company products nga paliton sa customers in a future. Apil na ang pag-gather nila og information to any event nga makatabang sa ilang future sales activity like promotion plans, pricing changes, and etc. It rationalized the detailed logistic plans, unique forecast for each warehouse and product with the aggregate product and national plans. With the right planning, the management can match the supply sa demand. With that, malikayan ang possible nga mga problems nga makasagabal sa proseso. Next is the production planning. The statement defines what items are needed and when. Production planning ensures materials, equipment, and employees are available to meet the production goals for a business. Apil na po diha ang production scheduling. Production planning is also a detailed plan kung unsaon pagkabot sa usa ka company ang ilang production goal o kung unsay gidugayon. It matches the requirements plan with the production constraints. Production planning typically starts with sales forecast, which is katong akong gidiscuss ganina sa demand planning. Nandito yung material, labor, capacity, and backup plan just in case nga magka problema. Next is the logistics planning. It coordinates transportation, warehouse, and inventory within firm between supply chain partners. In this planning, it includes transportation like what mode of transportation. For example, transferring of goods or products through land, sea, or air. Sa warehouse, ang inventory naman is kung asa nga warehouse ginabutang yung mga resources ug kung kanus ibutang sa inventory. These resources are materials, machine, and or labor. It focuses related international shipment. To meet the international supply chain needs, it has international shipping and logistics services. Usually less expensive kung sa sea transportation. Logistic planning is transportation of goods o isupply ang products sa tamang oras. It is essential for effective resource utilization. So, having poor planning quality ng product, so ang kitaon ang madamay. By creating goods partnerships sa suppliers in good logistic planning, you will be having a fast delivery ug makabawas sa gastos. Next is the inventory deployment. It represents one of the major enterprise integrators of sales, marketing, and financial goals. So sa sales and marketing strategic and objective, defines target markets, product development, promotions, other marketing mix plans, and the role of logistic value-added activities such as service levels or capabilities. Financial strategic objectives defines revenue, financial and activity levels, and corresponding expenses, as well as capital and human resources constraints. Inventory deployment process. So we have a long-term element and short-term elements. In long-term element, it focuses on annual and quarterly plans with the objective of coordinating the marketing and financial plans to achieve enterprise goals. In short-term elements, on it focuses on weekly and daily plans with the objective of coordinating supply chain, logistic resources to ensure that specific customer requests can be satisfied. So that's all for my part.
Hello, good day everyone. So again, my name is Ronald Segovia and my topic is under integrated operations planning. So my report will be from sales and operations planning until making sales and operations planning work. So let's start. So sales and operations planning, or SNOP, it is a process that coordinates demand and supply plans across the organization. It also includes information sharing and accountability to systematically to develop a common and consistent plan. However, it requires substantial information technology support. So without substantial information technology support, SNOP will not work. So SNOP technology integrates the firm's information regarding forecast, inventory availability, production resources, and other resource constraints. So that's how sales and operations planning works. Next is the sales and operating planning process. So in here, it collaboratively establish a coordinated plan corresponding to customer requirements within the resource constraints of the enterprise. So there are three steps in making traditional planning. First is the finance develops revenue plans and tactics that meet the expectations of Wall Street. The second step is the self-developed marketing plans and tactics that meet the revenue target for a firm's product groupings. It also includes establishing a specific production innovation. And the last step is the supply operations develop materials, manufacturing, and logistics plans that can meet customer demands within the operating constraints of the firm and its supply chain partners. So basically, SNOP is also a combination of information systems with significant elements of financial marketing and supply chain planning elements integrated with organizational process, responsibility, and accountability to develop consensus and execute collaborative plans. So SNOP is a broad, uh, it, uh, it covers a very big area in a certain organization from financial marketing, supply chain. It also affects when it comes to planning, it holds responsibility and accountability also. So that's the SNOP. So in here, this is the chart of how uh, SNOP or sales and operation planning process works. So there are three fundamental, uh, three components. Uh, 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 there are three components in how SNOP process works. So from the first component of the SNOP process is the business plan in terms of financial forecast and corresponding budget. So the plan is used to guide activity levels and determine aggregate volume and resource requirements. So, and the second component of the process is the sales plan, which developed from unconstrained marketing plan. The unconstrained marketing plan determines the maximum sales and profitability level that could be achieved if there were no supply chain operating constraints. It is also synthesizes the information regarding orders on hand, current customers, new customers, competition, selling margins, new product potential, pricing, and the overall economy of the project. What sales could be if there plan. In here, it developed from the firm's internal and partner resource constraints. So the operation synthesizes the resource demands into shape to identify and evaluate potential trade-offs. So in the business, unconstrained marketing and resource cards are integrated and synchronized through the SNOP process. So the process requires a combination of technology to identify and evaluate the binding constraints as well as managerial input to determine which constraints might be released in front of prioritizing customer shipments, changes in marketing plans, overtime operation, or outsourcing production. Then next is the making SNOP work or sales and operation planning work. So to make SNOP work, the process is required to be performed and monitored on a continuous basis to assure successful execution. And it's also for SNOP to be more effective over time, it must be a shared responsibility among all functional groups within the organization. So there are also other requirements to facilitate or to make the SNOP work. So here are some other requirements to facilitate the use of SNOP. First is the balance scoreboard integrating both operational and financial performance measure, supply chain visibility and data integration across multiple levels of the firm, performing monitoring and alerting to enable rapid response to unplanned events. Also collaborative and cross-functional analysis so the firm can select the most profitable strategy from alternatives considered. So those are the steps or ways how to make SNOP work. So there are 8 ways of achieving superior business performance using SNOP. So the first is executing the process element. So doing executing the process or doing the SNOP process over and over again every month uh, can be a win for your business. Next is process ownership and clarity and of roles and responsibilities. So in here, there's someone should be each drives and responsible for everything of how that make or can make the organization works and cooperate with each other. So uh, it requires a process champion, someone to drive the entire process so that the functional managers can direct direct operations that align with your business long-term strategic plan. So that's how process of process ownership and clarity of roles and responsibilities work. Next is the organizational commitment to achieving high forecast accuracy. So a business need to have a long-term commitment and view by whatever actions are necessary to be achieved to have a high forecast accuracy. Next is focus should be in the next 3 to 12 months. So it is important, although it is important to understand where the business stands relative to the budget, the focus should not be on the past results. It should be on looking forward, examining what the next 3 to 12 months projects are going to be like. So in, you need to always keep looking forward. Next is one integrated plan that integrates actions of the entire organization. So the fundamental purpose of an integrated SNOP process is to review deviations and operation forecast, products, plans, budgets, cycles, and plans as they relative achieving the goals of business or a company. So every step in the SNOP process should be governed by an overarching focus on executing the strategic plans for the business. Next is senior management decision making. So in a class self operating uh, operations planning process, the engine is decision making. So if a senior management is not willing to take action, the result will just be a lot of hand waving and a lot supply chain performance. So companies that embrace measurement as a starting point for continuous improvements are far better served by SNOP than the than those that resist measurement. Because in any SNOP process, the metrics are vital to ensuring success. So it provides indicators of how well the business performing and clearly illustrate progress that has been made to drive improvement. And the last K is the SNOP forecast versus operating plan or budget. So it is alright that these two plans are not the same at any point in time because companies should never artificially adjust the SNOP forecast to match the budget because since the SNOP forecast should be driving all the other supply chain decisions. So artificially adjusting the forecast will just increase cost and will not help to meet the budget. So the greatest business value is realized when companies are willing to analyze the gap between the forecast and budget and take the time to identify the actions that needed to be taken to close the gap. And that's all for my report. And thank you.
A pleasant day, everyone. My name is Ginalyn R. Busotros. My report is the continuation of Miss Laika Sumalinog. It's all about the supply chain planning consideration. So, supply chain planning, it is relatively new capability. The future outlook is bright as the technology and the capacity of effectively evaluate and manage integrity supply chains are developed, and also it focused on reducing the supply chain asset requirements as the demanded by the official market. We have the three major consideration. The first one is integrated versus bolt-on application. Next is data integrity. The last is application education. The alternative is use bolt-on or best-of-breed approach that seek to identify the best supply chain planning system for the firm on the basis of feature and functionality, and then attach it to the firm ERP system. The term bolt-on is similar to plug and play that is used to describe a piece of software that are easily integrated into another larger system. Next is data integrity is a second major consideration for supply chain planning system implementation. So, planning system rely on absolute data integrity for the effective decision making. While data integrity has always been important, more crucial for planning since missing and inaccurate data integrity can dramatically impact decision reliability and stability. Next is education regarding planning system application is a third major consideration. User training for supply chain is execution and planning system has usually focused on the mechanic to initiate the transaction. For example, changing the requirements of forecast for one item in a time period may shift production schedules for related item on a other side of the world. Next is integrated business planning. It is a process for aligning a company goals with its finance, supply chain, product development, making and other operational function. And also S&OP is evolving into integrated business planning or IBP in many organizations. This shift reflects the needs for more comprehensive business planning across the organization and the supply chain. We have the four given the names. The implication for S and OP is that to sales and operation, while BIP is similar to concept to S and OP. It is designed to include: first is greater financial integration. Next is increased inclusion of strategic initiative and activities. Next is improve simulation and modeling of alternative. And the last one is easier translation between aggregate and detailed level of planning. Next is supply chain planning summary. So, the major objective of an integrated supply chain planning capability is coordinated capacity management of relevant supply chain resources, including manufacturing plants, distribution center, and transportation resources. And also, the capacity problem can be resolved by resources acquisition or speculation of postponement of production of delivery, and also the capacity of limitation time pace, the enterprise and S and OP or IBP, by taking into account facility, financial and human resources limitation. That's all for my report. Thank you.
Good day everyone, I am Laika Sumalinog and I'm going to report today about the EPS system components. So EPS system stand for Advanced Planning and Schedule. It is a type of system na matrack ni ang cost based sa activities that are responsible for driving cost. And the major components are fundamentally the same. These are demand management, resource management, resource optimization, and resource allocation. So first is demand management, is develop the requirements projection for the planning horizon. So it is a procedure within an organization that allow na bag-ohon ang capacity para ma-meet na to ang fluctuation sa demand or regulate demand level through marketing or supply chain management method. And resource management is defined and coordinates supply chain system, resources, and constraint. So there are types of information. First is product definition. The product definition is provide the product description and physical characteristic such as weight and cube, standard cost, and bill of material. Second is customer definition. It's provide the ship, the location, and distribution assignments along with special service requirements. Third is resource definition and cost. It specifies the physical resources used to accomplish supply chain activities such as manufacturing, storage, and movement capacities. The resource including manufacturing equipment and process rates, storage facilities, and transportation equipment and availability. Fourth is system limitation. It defines major supply chain activities constraint. These include the capacity limitation associated with production, storage, and movement. The last one is planning definition. It defines criteria for developing a solution. Typical objective function include minimizing total costs or any of its subcomponents, meeting all customer requirements, or minimizing the number of instances when capacity is exceeded. The third components of MPS system is resource optimization. It also determines when requirements cannot be met and which resources are the most constraining on supply chain performance. It also be used to conduct sensitivity or what-if analysis to determine the impact of changes in market requirements or constraint. And next is resource allocation. It specifies the resource assignments and communicates them to the ERP system to initiate appropriate transaction. The resource allocation also provide information regarding when the product is available to promise or capable to promise. It also used to designate that event though actual inventory is not currently available. Next is I will discuss about the supply chain planning benefits. First is responsiveness to changes. It is logistic and supply manager have used extended lead times and schedule freezes to plan for future supply chain activity. For example, production would be scheduled 3 to 4 weeks into the future and then frozen to minimize uncertainty and allow for effective resource utilization. And the second one is comprehensive perspective. It is the second effective supply chain management requires planning and coordination across firm function and between supply chain partners. It is the process must consider the trade-off associated with shifting activities and resource across function and organization. And last is resource utilization. It is supply chain planning typically result in substantial performance improvements. It is more effective and responsive planning allows a more level assignments of resources for existing sources, production, storage, and transportation capacity. That's the end of my report. Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Rajan Salas from BS ENPTREP 3. So for today, I will be tackle about forecasting. So forecasting is the specific definition of what is projected to be sold when and where. So it is a technique that uses historical data as an input to make informed estimates that are productive in determining the direction of future trends. So it is important to utilize forecasting in a business para ma-differentiate mo ang past o ang present growth. Kanang iyong ma-estimate nimo daan bitaw ma-estimate nimo daan usa ka mag-go sa isa ka butang ana. So, in this section, it focuses on forecasting needs, benefits, methods, techniques, application, and measures. So, forecasting requirements is effective logistic requires matching the product requirements of customers with the capabilities in the enterprise and supply chain. So, here are the three types of forecasting requirements. The number one is collaborative planning. Without collaboration, each partner tries to plan the level and timing of demand for its customers, both individually and collectively. Second is requirements planning. Once a collaborative forecast is developed, logisticians use the forecast to drive requirements planning. Third is resource management. Once the plan is completed, it can be used to manage critical supply chain processes such as production, inventory, and transportation. So, forecasting components. Its types of forecasting methods are time series, regression, and qualitative. Qualitative methods use management judgment, expertise, and opinion to make forecasts, often called the jury of executive opinion. They're the most common type of forecasting method for the long-term strategic planning process. The forecast components include number one is base demand. Base demand is represent the long-term average demand after the remaining components have been removed. The base demand is the average over extended time. The base demand is the forecast for items having no seasonality trend, cyclic, or promotional components. Second is seasonal. Seasonal component is an annually requiring upward and downward movement is demand. An example is the annual demand for toys, which reflects low demand for 3/4 of the year and then increased demand just before Christmas. It should be noted that the seasonality discussed above refers to the consumer retail seasonality. Seasonality at the wholesale level precedes consumer demand by approximately 1/4 of a year. So, number 3 is trend. Trend component is a long-range graph of periodic sales. Trend may be positive, negative, or neutral in direction. A positive trend means that the sales are increasing over time. For example, the trend for personal computer sales during the decade of the 1990s was increasing. So, over the product life cycle, trend direction may change a number of times. For example, beer consumption changed from a neutral to an increasing trend during the past decade. So, nag-increase siya or nag-decrease result ba ang changes sa overall population? So, number 4 is cyclic. The cyclic component is characterized by periodic shifts in demand lasting more than a year. So these cycles may be either upward or downward. An example is the business cycle, in which economy typically swings from recession to growth cycles every 3 to 5 years. And 5 is promotional component. Promotional component characterizes demand swing initiated by firms' marketing activities such as advertising, deals, or promotion. So, and lastly is irregular. Irregular component includes the random or unpredictable quantities that do not fit within the other categories. Because of its random nature, this component is impossible to predict. In developing forecast process, the objective is to minimize the magnitude of the random component by tracking the predicting the other components. So here are. Next is forecasting process. Logistic planning and coordination require a best possible estimate of SKU location demand. So there are the 3 components of forecasting process. So number 1 is the forecast technique. The technique component is the mathematical or statistical computation used to combine base seasonal and cyclical components with elements of promotion history in a forecast quantity. Second is support system. The forecast support system includes the supply chain intelligence to gather the analyzed data. And third is administration. Forecast administration includes the organizational, procedural, motivational, and personnel aspect of forecasting and its integration into the other firm function. So I think that's all.
Good day, ma'am. So I'm Miriam M. San Pablo. So my report is continuation of report of Ms. Rosales. So we have forecasting process. Logistic planning and coordination require the best possible application demand. So in forecasting process, we should to decide what to forecast, and remember that forecasting are made in order to plan for the future. And the forecast management process should incorporate input from multiple sources, appropriate and mathematical and statistical techniques, decision support capability, and train motivated individuals. So, as illustrated in figure 6.7, the process foundation in the forecast database, including open orders demand history. So, and the tactic used to stimulate demand such as promotion, special deals, or product changes. And the box on the right side
figure 6.7 illustrate that it would be deal if a firm could use a common and consistent forecast for a planning function. Next is technique. The technique components is the mathematical statistical computation used to combine base, seasonal and cyclical components with elements of promotion history into a forecast quantity. So, techniques in management forecasting. So, ang pinaka-known sa techniques is ang qualitative techniques because when relevant and reliable numerical data is not available, this may be because you are trying something new or because the existing situation has changed radically. So, ang qualitative, nag-rely siya sa quality advice from informed people familiar with your situation. Next is support system. So the forecast of system includes the supply chain intelligent to gather and analyze data. So kini nga support system is critical because it helps services providers support and extend operation to enhance business services. So ang support system are used by all service providers. So gaya lang gud anang kwan kanang bitaw manatag maids. Diba ang tanan nilang baligya is nagka-system betan. Mingon tag napa mo available ani diba mingon sila nga lantawon sa nako sa system ha or whatever ano. So administration. Forecast administration includes the organizational, procedural, motivational and personal aspect of forecasting and puts integration into the other firm function. So sa mga forecasting administration, it's really needed good siya to have an accurate forecasting data to make decision that ensure na continued sustainability ang imong company. Diba, dako man jud kayo makatabang ang administration, diba, sa pag-forecast. Next is forecasting technique. So, demand forecasting requires the selection of appropriate mathematical or statistical to generate periodic forecast. So, we have some criteria for evaluating the applicability of techniques includes, first is accuracy. Accuracy, it means the statement of quantity to that quantity equal true value. So, sa mga business manggod, if more accurate forecast, accurate imong forecasting, so, maka-increase good ilang effectiveness to serve the demand while lowering overall operational cost. So next is forecast time horizon. So kining forecast time horizon, so mao ni ang short, medium, and long range. So it is the length of time into the future for which forecasts are to be prepared. So next is the value of forecasting. So of course, it's valuable to business because it gives the ability to make informed business decision and develop data-driven strategies. Next is data availability. So, kini nga techniques, diri nga magamit si qualitative forecasting. So, if there are no data available or if the available are not relevant to the forecast, then of course, qualitative forecasting must be used. So next is type of data pattern. So kini nga technique, the business can use information for forecasting and planning and to test theories and strategies. So next, experience of forecaster. So they predicting economic future along with how your business will respond. So they eventually using past data and should have careful analysis of current conditions. Next is qualitative techniques. So, rely on expertise and are quiet, costly, and time-consuming. So, they are for situation when little historical data and much managerial judgment are required. So, next is time series technique. So, are statistical method used when historical sales data continuatively clear and unstable. So, for example, kanabitang we can observe data every week for every lottery win. So, but we can never forecast who will win next. So, it meant it is after your data and your time series data analysis as when you should use forecasting. So, there are 4 time series in order to increasing complexity. First is moving average.
Second, exponential smoothing. Third, extended smoothing. Fourth is adaptive smoothing. So when we say moving average, forecasting use an average of the most recent period sales. The average age may use any number of periods time periods. So next, exponential smoothing. So it based the estimate of future sales, the weighted average of previous demand, and forecast level. So we have the increment of adjustment is called alpha factor. So mo ni ang example sa exponential smoothing. So kung kuha na tong F, it means forecasted sales for a time period. So if over 1 subtract to 1, forecast for time period. Sumunod D, actual demand for time period. And A, alpha factor or smoothing constant. So, for example, di ba, makita man ninyo da, assume that the forecast for the most recent time period with 100 and actual sales experience. So, was 110 units. So, further assume that the alpha factor being employed is 0.2, then by substitution. So, magamit ta og formula. Diba mo na yung formula nga F equals ED over 1 subtraction of 1 plus 1 minus A equals F and 1 po. So, ang atong kuha ni, ang atong, diba, A. So, magamit tag alpha factor. So, pila mga alpha factor there is, diba, 0.2. So, ato ang D is actual demand. So, ang ato actual demand is 110. So, plus, so, ang 112 is equals D, ay, A, alpha factor, is 0.2 din times 100. Ganyan times, ang 100, mao ni atong period time. Mao ni atong forecast time period. So, atong 0.2 times 110 equals 22. So, plus 1 minus 0.2, then times 100 equals 80. So, 102. So the forecast for period is for product sales of 102 units. Next, extended exponential smoothing. So, incorporates the influence of trend and seasonality when specific values for these components can be identified. So, next is adaptive smoothing. So, it provides a regular review alpha factor fit. The alpha value is reviewed at the conclusion of its forecast period. Forecasting accuracy refers to the difference between forecast and corresponding actual sales. So, ang forecasting accuracy, nag-require siya og error measurement and analysis.